Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. In light of the ongoing discussion of Bitcoin's energy usage, the Bitcoin Mining Council released major findings in their second quarter report, which concluded that 56% of global Bitcoin mining was done using sustainable energy. Joining me to discuss is Darin Feinstein, co-founder of Core Scientific, and also plays a key role in the Bitcoin Mining Council. It's great to have you with us, Darin. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thanks for having me, Jill. Pleasure.
And Darin, tell us more about the report and some of the key findings.
I think it's important to frame what the Bitcoin Mining Council is doing and why why we came together voluntarily to disseminate some of the information that we've been providing to the community for some time now. And really what's happened in our industry over the last decade, which I've been in the industry for about 10 years now, is that the energy metrics that are used by the mainstream media to by a large extent and to some of the detractors of the technology is that the energy footprint of this Bitcoin network is massive and it's very bad for the environment and the planet. And I think all of us together agree that there are environmental problems in the world, and we're all trying to be good citizens to figure out how to be better, do better business in a more responsible manner. And there are people that do violate that basic premise, but this is not one of those industries. It's the exact opposite. The Bitcoin mining that goes on uses a negligible amount of power. What generally happens is people frame the issue in terms of other countries in the world, and they'll look at the smallest countries with the smallest footprint of energy, and they'll say the Bitcoin mining global network uses more energy than this small country, the Netherlands or New Zealand. And so they frame it against a global backdrop. But what they don't explain is that what is that global backdrop? What's the actual amount of power if we're going to compare it to the worldwide use of power? What is that amount of power that's being used in the world? And the answer is the world generates on a yearly basis a certain amount of power, and that number is 160,000 terawatt hours of energy. That's what's generated globally. The Bitcoin network, which is the subject of a massive amount of environmental concern, uses of that 160,000 terawatt hours of energy right now today, approximately 189 of those terawatt hours of energy, a negligible amount. And so when people, their knee-jerk reaction to like, wow, this network uses more energy than the Netherlands or New Zealand, they're like, wow, this is terrible, we need to shut it down. But if they actually look at it as a percentage of global power use, it's a nominal amount. So it's 0.0001, 0.1% approximately of the world's generated energy. And so when you draw it down to the actual amount of energy, you start to look at it in a different light and says, okay, well, since it's such a negligible use of energy, what are you doing about your energy footprint? And the answer to that is we've been doing environmentally friendly building and construction since day one. And I can't speak towards everybody, but at Core Scientific, our first building was located and is located, and I sourced it. It's in the Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina, and it sits in the midst of a series of hydroelectric plants that were built by the United States government in the 1940s as part of the Manhattan Project. And that energy, that hydroelectric energy, if it's not being used or sold to the grid, is stranded, which means if it's not used, it dissipates. So they're creating the energy in these hydroelectric dams, but because there's no demand for the energy up in these remote regions, the energy just goes away. And so because the Bitcoin mining industry is very price sensitive, we want to pay 3 cents, 2 cents, 4 cents per kilowatt hour. Residential demand will bring the price to homes somewhere around 11 to 25 cents a kilowatt hour. And so, and industrial is somewhere around 7 or 8 cents. up to 20 cents a kilowatt hour, depending geographically where they're located.
Got it. Okay, so back to the report. Were there any key findings in there, any surprising findings that we should be aware of?
I think the findings showed exactly what the people that are knowledgeable in the industry already knew. And that is that people like myself that have large industrial facilities that host Bitcoin mining equipment already use a predominant amount of renewable and sustainable energy in our facilities. And it happens naturally because the prices of renewable energy that are stranded are the lowest prices available on the market. And so if I'm going to locate a facility somewhere in the United States, I'm going to look for a renewable energy source that has no demand, that has stranded power. And because there's no demand, they're going to sell me power at a really inexpensive price. And what that renewable energy does, because it doesn't deplete, right? So you have a non-depletable energy source. So water doesn't go away. If people are using solar, the sun doesn't stop shining, wind doesn't stop blowing. You have non-depletable cost of goods if you're the power company. And so you have inexpensive energy. And then the groups like us that come in there to utilize it, we're the buyer of last resource for those fundamental, very important critical infrastructure facilities in America that have large amounts of renewable or sustainable energy for sale that's not being purchased. And if people aren't buying the sustainable and renewable energy, then they're not going to go out and spend additional capital dollars to build new and larger renewable and sustainable energy centers. And so yeah.
So Darin, you just mentioned groups like us. Tell us more about Core Scientific. Where do you fit within this ecosystem?
Core Scientific is the largest hosting and mining company right now in the United States and possibly in the world. And we've been around since 2017. Some of our metrics are public. We mined in the first quarter 755 Bitcoin, and in the second quarter we mined 928 Bitcoin. And so we're a very large miner, and we have a very sustainable footprint. 56% of our energy is sustainable, and of Core Scientific, and of the other percent that's not sustainable that we purchase from the electrical grid, 44% we buy REC credits, we buy carbon credits for those. So Core Scientific, the largest infrastructure company right now in the space, is 100% carbon neutral today in 2021. Other industries are not so clean. And so you see the automobile industry, they want to be carbon neutral by 2050. You see some of these other tech conglomerates that want to be carbon neutral by 2030. Well, Bitcoin mining, the largest company right now in America, is carbon neutral today. But we're disproportionately singled out by a lot of different sources as being unfriendly to the environment when it's actually the complete opposite.
So Darin, what kind of impact is China's ban on Bitcoin miners going to have on the industry, or is it even having an impact at this point?
Yes, it has a massive impact. We see it all as positive. It's a positive on a decentralization metric. A few years ago, over 75% of the network was in China. So we see it as a positive that it's traveling the globe right now, looking for freer markets that protect private property and private industry. And so the Bitcoin mining network and infrastructure moving around the globe, we see that as a big positive to the environment that we're in. We also see it as an environmental side. Up in the northern region of China, you had a lot of coal facilities that were utilizing power to generate Bitcoin mining, fundamentally utilizing some of the energies that we're trying to get away from as an industry. But it's the use of different energies in different countries depends on what their footprint is. In the southern region of China, there's an area called the Sichuan region that was primarily hydroelectric power and completely renewable energy. And so you saw, I don't know what the percentage was, but a large percent of the miners, if I had to guess, were located in those hydroelectric parts of China. But on an overall basis, if you look at the metrics like we talked about earlier on global energy use, if you look at the total amount of energy that's used in China, on a coal side, they use 25,000 terawatt hours of energy from coal a year. So 25,000 of China's terawatt hours of energy that they utilize on an annualized basis from coal. And if you ascribe to them 50% of the network, they'd be roughly 200 terawatt hours of energy. So 200 of their 25,000 hours of coal energy. If you ascribe all of the Bitcoin mining that happened in China to their coal regions, so by the Chinese government turning off all of the Bitcoin miners in China, all that would have happened was they turned off 200 terawatt hours of 25,000 terawatt hours of coal. And so I think it goes to show you that any country, like speaking beyond China, any country in the world that says that they're going to restrict Bitcoin mining in their territory has other issues with this technology, and it's most likely not energy related, because even turning the entire network off doesn't change the carbon footprint of the emissions that come from the total amount of energy used. And I think the people should really start looking at how much energy is used on a global basis, and then looking at the system instead of looking at small systems and then comparing this network to a tiny system. And so that would be one of the ways that we could measure this on the environmental side.
All right, Darin, we appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
All right.